delay you any further from what's going to happen tonight. What I'm going to do is we're going to popcorn to our host, to our guests, participants tonight, and allow them to introduce themselves and kind of go ahead and get this conversation going. So if you are in the building and you're ready to hear us, we're going to get this started right now, and let's go with. I said I'm ready to be. I'm gonna pass it off to Julian and let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and where you're from.
I'm Julian Dove. I am from New Bern, North Carolina. I'm a licensed funeral service practitioner here. Fourth generation funeral director in the family. Our family owns Oscar's Mortuary in the Pembroke community of New Bern, North Carolina.
Awesome. Mr. Julian. I think I have Mr. Jesse somewhere over here.
Yes, sir. Name is Jesse Mars, also from New Bern, North Carolina. The owner of Playtime Bounce House Party Store. We're a party supply store here in New Bern, where we also offer party rentals, such as inflatables, concessions, and tables, chairs, and tents, anything you would need for a party. And I'm just excited about Black people, excited about the progression of Black people, and want to be a part of the progression of Black people. So I'm just ready for the Juneteenth conversations.
Awesome. I'm going to go out to Mr. Jomo. Is that how we say it? Waiting for Mr. Jomo. Is that how we say your name, brother? Can you hear me? Our next participant. I don't hear you. Can't hear you. And if you're joining us while we're waiting for him to come back on, please make sure you're going to mute. And make sure you put your phones and devices on mute. Mr. Jomo, you want to introduce yourself? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm Jomo O'Connell. Yes, sir. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I am the executive vice president of Buffalo's Juneteenth Festival, the 7th consecutive festival, one of the largest and one of the multi-activity Juneteenths, utilizing the whole month and actually doing activities throughout the year.
Awesome. We are really excited to have this conversation with these brothers tonight, to kind of jump right in and talk about the oldest known holiday in the United States that commemorates the ending of slavery. So what I'm going to do at this time is just kind of get your take on what Juneteenth is, and I'm going to pass it off. We're going to start with Mr. Jomo. We're going to go from that order. Let you just kind of tell us your take on Juneteenth, and then we just go on from there.
All right, I'm sorry, that was for me, right, for Jomo?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes. So basically, the history is that the Civil War was fought. Many people don't realize that we were the main integral part, meaning Black people were the main integral part of pretty much the main idea of that war. Upon the conclusion, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which made it illegal for the states that succeeded to continue having African people enslaved. Now, people who still had enslaved people in the North, they weren't under that rule. Texas is a place 2 years later, 2 years and a few months later, in 1865, June 19th, in Texas, General Granger was sent there, and he was informing the Africans there, the Black people there who were enslaved. That meant by 1865, the law was set up for the 13th Amendment, and it was illegal to hold people against involuntary servitude unless there's still some little caveats where some people kind of didn't follow the law completely. But that is the general history. And we have been celebrating Juneteenth, and for the last maybe 15, 20 years, we've been getting into something called the Sankofa Days, which talks about some people keep trying to start our story from enslaved. And we don't just say the word slaves because we weren't born slaves, we were enslaved. Our understanding of Juneteenth and what it signifies gets a little deeper into, you know, being grammatically correct and putting history and also the future in perspective.
Awesome. We're gonna pass it over to Julian. You wanna take
And what it means to me is making sure that we control the narrative. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
What it means to me, it means it just means freedom for all our people. It means, okay, America was trying to get it right. They didn't get it exactly right, but they're trying to get it right. And to me, it should mean more of a national holiday where we all celebrate as we celebrate 4th of July. And you call us enslaved people. I call us prisoners of war, Mr. Jomo, because those are warlike tactics. That's just my personal opinion, not to discredit anything you said. It just means it gave us as the Black people who are behind those enemy lines a chance to just take up in the American dream.
Awesome. Mr. Jesse?
If I could be honest, I'm a little ashamed. I learned about Juneteenth maybe just 5 years ago, and I've spent my whole life in the South. Especially being born in New Orleans, Louisiana, growing up the early part of my years in New Orleans, Louisiana, I don't ever recall the words Juneteenth being spoken. But now, since I know about Juneteenth and have done a small amount of history on what Juneteenth means, I agree with the other two brothers as well. It means a sense of liberty. It means the opportunity to be able to control our narrative. It means the opportunity to be able to go back and get what belongs to us. And then it also gives us the opportunity to band together culturally as Africans born in America, to realize where we come from and to establish a foundation of where we're headed. So that's what it means to me.
I was saving this for later, but I've heard this come up a lot. Some might argue in this time that we have begun to whitewash or to kind of just take away the message and what it really means to be liberated and free in America as a former enslaved African. And so the holiday does not hold the significance as we see the nation celebrated now. And folks are starting to say, oh, this doesn't feel as organic or as natural as it should. How do you feel? Do you think at this point, because it's getting so much attention now and people are talking about it, that they really understand the significance and the story and the history behind the Juneteenth or the Emancipation Day or Freedom Day? Anybody want to just tackle that?
I feel like this. All Black people have not embraced it, because the very first time I heard of Juneteenth, I didn't embrace it until I started learning more. And the more that I learned, I'm like, okay, we all need to embrace it, but all of America needs to embrace it. And the reason I say that is because whenever it's good for America to say we are all Americans, they would say, oh, you're an American. If we go to war right now and all the Black men say we're not going to war, you're going to hear everybody say you're American. And if you want us to eat apple pie, celebrate the 4th of July as quote unquote Americans, You need to be over here partying with us. You need to be celebrating the end of a traumatic time in American history, not just our history, but American history as just as much as you're going to celebrate 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Why are Blacks and white people and the Hispanic community and any other race that comes over here, why are they ashamed to celebrate this? Besides the ones who are trying to make money off of us by having ice cream or T-shirts that say Juneteenth.
Anybody else? And we're basically talking about the commercialization of Juneteenth so quickly. So does it take its significance away from it, Mr. Jomo and Mr. Jesse, in this time?
No, I totally agree with everything that Julian said. I think it's just taking the opportunity to educate yourself. Obviously, everybody has their opinion about everything. So some would say that it's whitewash for those who may not be as ingrained in Juneteenth history versus individuals like the Buffalo community where Juneteenth is a significant part of their history. And so they understand how it has developed over the years. And they would probably say, no, it's not whitewash. It's something that we've always done. So, I think as more education comes along, as more people embrace it, like Juliana said, I think there'll be a balance there. And the people who feel like there'll always be people who will try to capitalize off of what we do. We see it in every aspect of life in American society that capitalism is what runs this country. But for us as Black people, if we can know the difference, then we still have the ability to control our narrative. So for me, I don't think it has reached a commercialization since it has been made a federal holiday. I think it's just something that's just very new to a lot of African Americans.
Okay, Mr. Jomo, you have anything to contribute right there?
Basically, I hope the reception is a little bit clear. I'm actually in the area, the Tops area, where many people have seen the massacre that has taken place in Buffalo. We have some guests here and we're taking them to the site. But I think that one of the most important things is exactly, we have to control the narrative, and we also have to know the narrative ourselves. Most Black people in America don't know what happened to Black people in America.
Mm-hmm.
Most Black people in America don't know what happened to Black people in the Caribbean. Most Black people in America don't know what happened to Black people in Africa. And I can take all of those variables and interchange them. And the majority of us don't know what happened to us in our own countries that we reside, to many of these places that we have been taken captive, and also to the shores from which we were stolen from. So therefore, if we keep on living, studying, eating, buying, participating in everyone else's stories, holidays, version of history, and you have other people who are making it illegal to talk about our history, we're going to be properly and thoroughly a creation like a Negro, those things were created like in America. We'll be the creation of those who control the narrative. And I think that more information is coming, and we are evolving to be a more free and determined people, especially as we walk towards that destiny, that history, and we begin to share with each other. Because it's not per se like a race to see who can know or do the most. I think that we're on a natural progression towards losing the custodialship of Europeans. I think their time is just over. And whether we accept it or they accept it, it has nothing to do with the time in the world that we live in right now. The time for us to rise and resurrect and repair is now. And I don't think that anybody can stop that.
For sure.
I love it, the fact that we're in a time that our stories are finally coming to fruition, and our legacy is finally being seen for what it is and what it is. And the good thing about this time, Mr. Jomo, the truth can no longer be hidden, behind the mountain, as the old folks used to say. It's got to be out front. How do we continue to, what would I say? We talk a lot about preserving legacy. We talk a lot about Then we'll get into the celebration part. We talk a lot about the branding or the telling of our own narrative. The African proverb says, unless the lion tells the story, the hunter will always get the glory. And we've lived so long under the premises of the hunter getting the glory because we've not been able to tell our stories properly. And we pass them down orally. And I see Julian ready to get in. We pass them down orally. We could talk about, I know being a product of the South and a product of Eastern North Carolina, and the stories that I've heard coming down after slavery and through Jim Crow and through the sharecropper eras of the country from my grandmother and my grandfather, and just that oral rich history of being told, and the pride they had as people of color, even after coming through so much economic and social genocide. And being able to maintain those stories. And now we're at a place that we can actually tell it and tell it accurately. And folks have to hear, and we have to make them hear. So I think that being able to kind of talk about what messaging looks like in 2022 as we tell our stories. How do you think we do that, Julia? How do you think we do that, Joe Long?
I first think, as you see a lot on social media, slavery is interrupted history. So you need to be open about slavery, what has happened to us. We need to be open about what we were before the brutal period of slavery, and then we need to be open about what we were doing after slavery. Because just like right in Durham, North Carolina, it doesn't get as much credit, but it was a Black Wall Street. I went to a seminar. North Carolina was known as a state that wasn't as brutal in slavery and was known to have free people of color who were educated. So if you went to become a teacher anywhere on the East Coast, if you just say, hey, I'm from North Carolina, I'm a teacher, you got a job that quick. So I say all that to say this: we can't be ashamed of our history. We have to engage and learn it. When you think about a lot of our history, even we tell it from one angle, and I myself have told it from one angle and being angry, because when you find out stuff and find out how it was kept from you, you're naturally going to be angry. So for myself, just speak for myself, learn more, stop being angry, and we can just tell the greatness of the people we are. Just like you said, look how we have overcome so many things. One thing a lady told me, she said, we were poor, but we were never hungry. Like, get back to the basics, get back to farming, keeping a few animals, whether just the basic things, learn a trade. Those are the things that we can do and teach our kids our history. Just don't let them know Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, which are great. But like Brother Jomo, learn who his name came from. I don't know the exact history, but I do know there was a gentleman from Africa named Jomo who has a lot of history behind his name and a lot of struggle and a lot of fight. We have to learn all of this in a whole. That's just my opinion.
Awesome sauce. I'm gonna plug right here. Make sure you're still joining us. We're talking Juneteenth, we're talking history, we're talking legacy, we're talking progression with our powerful brothers, Mr. Jomo, Mr. Julian, and Mr. Jesse, all the J's in the room, and the big R Reggie B here. So if you're coming on and you're new to the audience tonight, please mute yourself. You can drop any comments or question in the comment box. Right now, we're talking about branding our story as we are moving through this historical picture of America and Black presence and Black excellence in this country. Because we can't, some people might say that the messaging of the Black presence in America is a very horrific story, but it's also a story of progression, a story of how we overcome and triumph through so many hurdles and so many obstacles as a people. And now we're here in this place, we all telling our story and talking about how we continue to brand it. So we're just jumping on Jesse or Jomo, if you have something to talk about when it comes to branding and telling your story.
I actually, oh, sorry, go ahead, go ahead. I'm good, go ahead.
No, no, you go ahead, brother.
I was just going to communicate. I actually work for a Black media. I work for WFO Radio. So I get a chance not only to study, but also to share what we're learning because we control the airwaves. I do work with our Black newspapers inside of our community. So wherever you are, whether it's your church, whether it's your school, any of your fraternal or social organizations, we have to make sure that we keep telling our stories, and not only the Bob Marleys or the Jomo Kenyattas or any of those stories, but even knowing the stories of our families. We were talking a little earlier about people who can pass information down, knowing what different generations of families were doing, knowing the history of our own communities. I think that is one of the most important things that all of us can do as we also begin to expand even in the, the local, the national, and the diaspora study. So spending our time studying us and everything that we do study, we need to make sure that we know the Black side of the story. And that's with every story. And I think that's the biggest glitch that has happened as we've all passed grade school and high school and some college. We've all mastered everyone else's history except our own. So their leaders, their history, basically their ancestors have been forced in our brains and they're on the tip of our tongues. And our grandparents, we don't know their first and last name. So I think that we need to rearrange who and how we communicate about ourselves. And I think it starts with your own family, if you can.
Awesome.
Control it.
Awesome. You know what, Mr. Jomo, my dad was a historian of our family. So we spend a lot of time talking about, historical facts that we find out about our family, that we go back and how far we can go back, because a lot of those stories get broken down over the years. And one of the projects that I've taken on in my personal family is restoring one of our historic cemeteries, Mr. Julian, that has not been buried or used or occupied in over 50 years, but was really one of the only remnants we had left from the land that our family once owned in that area. That's another whole story about how it was taken and how we lost it. Even a cemetery. And I was walking, we were working out there last year and walking through that sacred ground to see the stories that are there, just off the headstone. From the 1700s until the 1970s. And so we're talking about branding and protecting, not just branding, but protecting our historical right to be Americans. Some folks don't think we still have the right to be considered Americans in this space we're in right now. So let's talk about what branding, what messaging. Mr. Jesse, I'm gonna give you a chance to jump on and just kind of have a talk with us about what you feel are some of the important parts that we need to be protecting and messaging in 2022.
I'm sorry, was that directed for me? I didn't hear you.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. We'll talk about, just pick up what you were about to talk about earlier.
Okay, I agree with Brother Jomo and I agree with Brother Julie. I'm 100%. My grandfather is 85 years old, still alive and kicking like a 60-year-old man. So every time I get the opportunity to sit down with him and speak, he gives me so much history. He speaks about the times when he was working for New York Transit in the 60s as a porter, which that's a position that doesn't even exist anymore, and how he was treated by his coworkers, and all the struggles that he had to endure, even though being a very intelligent man, not always getting the opportunities. That was fuel for me. That was fuel to the fire for me to be able to want to understand who I am, want to understand who we are as Black people. And then also, I think going to Africa a few times, one thing that was beautiful that I saw that was still intact for them was rite of passage programs, where once children, boys and girls, once they reach a particular age, there was a rite of passage that you had to go through that would ingrain certain things in you based upon the tribe that you would come from. So if you were Mende, you went through the Mende rite of passage. If you were Creole, you went to the Creole rite of passage. If you were Timne, you went through that rite of passage. That's one thing I would hope that our society would go back to, those rite of passage programs, so that the next generation will understand, not only have just the idea of who we are, but something tangible that they can actually go back to. And it's just it's crazy, like being in the profession that I'm in. With doing parties, we do parties for all different nationalities, all different groups of people, all different cultures of people. So when we do parties for Burmese families, it's amazing to see the Burmese children who were born in the U.S. and now they have taken on American culture. They speak English fluently because they've gone, they've been in the American school system. And then you look at their parents and their grandparents, and their parents and grandparents are still wearing their traditional garments. And you can see that there's a disconnect between the generations. And I become sad because when I look at it, I said there's going to be a point in time where those Burmese children will have to become synonymous with what it means to be American. And what it means to be American is to get rid of any other culture that doesn't belong to American culture. So it is important for us to take on, to not only be proud to be American, but also to understand that there's so much more to our story that it will empower us. Being in Africa, I realized that as Black Americans, we are the most powerful group of Black people on the face of the earth. While I was there in Sierra Leone, you would see the Lebanese, you would see the Chinese, you would see the Indians. When they would look at you, they would look at you and know that you look a little bit different. Like, yeah, you're a Black man, but there's something different about you. And then as soon as you open your mouth and start talking, they would say, oh, he's American. And when they find out you're American, they want to know, why are you here? What are you doing here? Because they're under the assumption that you're bringing your US dollars to compete against them. So we are powerful. We just don't realize it, or we don't always realize it, how powerful we are. So if we had those rite of passage programs that could help us understand how powerful we are, and begin to put our societal structure back in place to where children understand their place in society, the teenagers understand their place in society, the women, the men, the elders understand their place in society, then there's a natural order there.
There is a place I want to go to now, because we did it in several aspects, even before we started the call with our participants. We talked about tradition. The word tradition kind of stands out, and you can't talk about Black history, Black culture. We talk about the traditions of Black America. And one of the things that we've noticed in a lot of the celebrations that happen around Juneteenth is really kind of earmarking those traditions that we have passed down through generations to come. One of the things I can recall is, and I was a grandson who my grandparents were sharecroppers, so they kind of had a lot of those traditions coming up growing up. I remember Julian being in the ENC, using the wash pot to make lard soap, and using the wash pot as we killed the hogs and chickens, and just not just because of the act of doing it, but the ceremony of our traditions that happen around the wash pot with my uncles and my grandmothers and my sisters and my uncles and brothers and all those folks are gathered, and the stories that I heard. You're rooted deep in tradition. Let's talk about tradition and how that plays such a unique role in celebrating Juneteenth. Mr. John, you want to kick it off with that word and talk about what traditions play a role in Black culture and how we still celebrating to highlight Juneteenth.
If I'm hearing you correctly, like I said, I'm having a little internet problems, but this whole idea of beginning to learn and hear traditions, it means that we have to know pretty much what the generation before us was doing, or the generations before us were doing. Those stories only come by either being told or being relearned. One of the things that makes the Africans in the West so important is that we have access to research. And if we're good, we have access to living beings, and we spend time finding out about what we missed. I did a lot with music, so I spent a lot of time with different continental Africans
sharing history and culture, and also finding out what we missed. You didn't have a ceremony for circumcision, or you didn't have a ceremony for rites of passage. Hearing about those things for the first time, it started making you think like, wait a minute, I thought we knew everything here in America. Now they tell you, hey, they didn't tell you this in the bush. He's like, what do you mean about the bush? So getting a chance to really find out what all they didn't tell us in history class, and what they didn't tell us here, and what happened during our interruption, But at the same time, there are a lot of things that are actually hidden in African American culture that are distinctly African as well. So everything was not lost. A lot of it was misidentified, and it has still been done, but not been verbally acknowledged. For instance, for those who go to church, and for those who go to Pentecostal or Sanctified or Southern Baptist, and you respond to the music, the spirit, and the energy. Well, if you look at the moves that the people are doing, is very similar. If you get a chance to go to Africa, when you begin to see traditional drumming and dancing. The only problem is that most Black people in America haven't spent time watching the dance of people outside of America. So there are certain things that we begin to add up once we get a chance to really study, know, and compare, those histories for ourselves. And that information is everywhere. But on keeping those traditions, I think we're going to be getting into that a little bit later, but actually knowing what we missed. And sometimes you don't know until you compare it. And we have to have an alternative than just the Europeans' version of who we are. We have to have another narrative to compare this with. That's the main quest. We have to have it in our own words.
Before we move on, you said we have to have another narrative. So I like that, because we've been taught in such a westernized model of who we are as a people, who we are before we came to America, who we are since we've been in America. And in so many instances, that causes us to be kind of not proud of Black American or Black African American history. And just kind of look at it like, this is not good. It's to be looked down upon, and we don't become proud. So it typically loses its intensity, and loses its zeal for chasing after it. And so how do we? And I know we got to talk about traditions, but how do we go back to that to make sure that our young people who are coming up behind us are taking hold of who we are and kind of wearing? I think they're doing a good job of some of the ones that I'm seeing. Of taking hold of Black culture and wearing it as a badge of honor, and not kind of putting it back on the shelf. And we have to kind of dig deep, and still digging deep to find out and be able to compare to what true culture of Black or former enslaved people was like, and now that we're here and we're
first of
kind of
all,
opening our eyes.
ashamed of.
Go ahead.
First of all, we can't be ashamed.
Right.
I heard you say that you have a family cemetery goes back to the 1700s.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be ashamed of where you come from. We get so ashamed that our families were sharecroppers. Now, I'm pretty sure you have a few cousins who feel like, oh, I'm educated, I don't have to do that now. Okay, but if it wasn't for grandma, great-grandma, great-granddaddy, great-great-granddaddy, you wouldn't have been here. So, pardon me, y'all, that's the work phone. So if you take that shame out of it and still embrace it as you continue to grow economically, grow in your education, I think that would be that can bridge the gap. Because you can say, you know what? Yes, I do have education. Yes, I do talk the King's English correctly, even though it wasn't our first tongue. But this is where we come from. So every now and then we're going to go back to Pitt County or wherever our family's from, and we're going to do a little farming. We're going to take our shoes off and walk barefoot on the land so we can connect with our ancestors. And just far as talking about like tradition, Jesse's from New Orleans. And I'm a funeral director. I've never done a funeral the way funerals were done in New Orleans, but we need to embrace everybody's culture and what they do, from the church to funerals to just everyday work patterns. Like, the sharecroppers, they work from sun up to 12, take a break. then from 12 to the end of the day. But then some of our aunts and uncles, they got away from sharecropping, went to the city, got different jobs, lost those traditions. They should have still been teaching the city cousins how to plant tomatoes, plant cucumbers, so they can always have some food. We got too prideful too.
Got too prideful, okay. Mr. Jesse, you got any pointers about tradition and protecting traditions and what we have to do to kind of keep telling those stories?
Something that Mr. Brother Jomo said that rang with me is having something to compare to. As long as you have something to compare to, then you have a standard that you can place something up against. So when I, once again, being in Africa and seeing the scary similarities between continental Africans and Africans in the diaspora, it blew me away. The way that we interact with one another. In Sierra Leone, the young brothers, they got this, when they dap each other up, after they dap each other up, they don't let each other hands go. And so they walk with each other with their hands still interlocked. And they'll walk a whole block with their hands interlocked after they dap each other up. That's something that we see amongst our young people here. When a group of men are sitting around, and somebody says something pretty funny, everybody jump up and they run in different directions. Everybody's laughing hard, slapping each other on the knees, slapping each other on the back. That's something that we still do here. So as long as there's something to compare against, we understand that we're not as far apart from one another as we would think. And there's something beautiful about that, to say that we're powerful. We're a group of people that have survived the test of time, and yet here we are, we still stand. So I think that's one way that we just have to have something to compare it against, and to understand that we're a great group of people.
Awesome. We're going to use some time to talk about events towards at the end, but this part of talking about historical markers or traditions in our community, and I can reflect back on, I've always known about Juneteenth. My parents always talked about it. Always had something to kind of add about knowing the history. I was telling my brother a couple of months ago that we talked about my mom ensuring that we had books. One of the first set of books she bought us that we had in the house was the ebony Black history books, like the whole edition. And I laugh about it now because those black and brown books still on her shelf. But that was one of our first areas that she made us read. And you're not learning in that school, so it's your expectation to get in, and the more you learn, if you have questions about it, we'll go from there. That's going to be our starting point. I thank her for that. I think my dad, who was the son of a sharecropper, and my grandfather who sharecropped and put my dad and my aunt through college in the 50s and early 60s, and knowing that those type of stories of how they came through that struggle and tradition and still fought to demand what was theirs. And now we still have to come back and protect that legacy and make sure that our young people have access to it. Let's talk about the types of celebrations that we might see in Juneteenth and why they're significant still today, because I think we raise up the idea of, celebrate these communal spaces. And one of the things that we don't, I feel like we are we're fighting to hold on to in Black culture. It's communal spaces where we celebrate. We talked about earlier, Julian, funeral homes being those places, churches or religious gathering spots. In my space, my grandmother's house, in those spaces that we get together to celebrate, our accomplishments, to celebrate our sadness, and those places. What do we see when we see those celebratory moments in Black culture and in Black history and in Juneteenth? I want to kick off there, take over.
Yeah, I'll go first with that. I saw a video a few years ago, and it was somewhere in Texas. I know Juneteenth originated in Galveston, Texas, but this was a Juneteenth celebration. I'm not sure what city it was in, but I know it was in Texas. And what blew me away is they were getting ready to cook a hog, but what they did is they split the hog down the middle. They put the hog in between two pieces of mesh wire. They wrapped the entire thing in aluminum. They dug a huge hole with a backhoe, and then they put the hog in the ground, and they cooked it in the ground. And so I was like, man, and then I didn't understand it at the time, until you until I did a little bit more research, and I saw like, okay, that's some traditions that are done in Africa as well, as far as cooking food in the ground, and the ability to be able to hold on to those traditions, once again having something to compare to, and then also to celebrate African American history, where we have the Black cowboys that ride the horses, and to give homage to them, to say, hey, Black people were the first cowboys in America. I think those traditions are very important to us, especially for our young people to say that this is who we are, and this isn't something that we should be ashamed of. We should be proud.
Mr. Julian, Mr. Jomo, anybody else have anything to add there about what kind of celebrations we can look to see in and around our community during this stuff?
The celebration that we can look to see.
And why they're significant.
Repeat that, please.
And why they are significant to our culture and our communities now.
I can't name anything in particular, but like we were saying earlier, it would give us a sense of pride. It's like, if we learn more of our African traditions, especially where we come from in Africa, it just puts me in a place of how I hear young men and young women say, I want to be a Mason because of my grandfather. I want to be an Eastern Star because of my grandmother. And those are traditions that just been picked up in the last 100 years. I'm gonna just say about the last 100 years. Why? Because they brings them closer to a grandparent that either is still here or no longer here. Just like the last few weeks, I saw on Facebook a lot of my lady friends, female friends, were celebrating their AKA anniversary or their Delta anniversary. It just lets you know, like, hey, this is a club that we're in that too many people aren't in. So I say that to say, when we do learn who we are, where we come from, what tribe we are, and we can start participating with that over here, we can tell our children, hey, we're great because this is where we come from, back home in Africa. That's why tradition is important.
Julie, what about the dances that take place at Tryon Palace with the gentleman that wears the costume? What is that called again?
Now you shouldn't have asked me that. But that's based on African tradition, and if I don't know if I'm correct, but I do kind of think that's one of the things that were allowed to stay from Africa because it was entertaining to the people who kept us in slavery, and they could kind of hide the tradition. It wasn't something that they felt was dangerous.
Gotcha.
Mr. Jomo, you have anything to add about celebrations and traditions at this moment?
Yeah, well, I would just add, I think that where he is actually communicating and where you might have been going, I'm just trying to follow it with you. In the Caribbean, that might be called John Canoe. And inside of West African cultures, you have the African drummers and dancers dancing there. And there are many people who, sometimes the children are made, a little fearful because you see a interesting object that moves different, and it kind of replicates something that's not normal in human things. So, you know, there's some spiritual connotations there. But I really think that many of us, you know, because there's no one thing happening inside of all of Africa tradition, except that we kept family. People have different customs, we have similar things. And with us being a cosmopolitan of Africans who, you know, were brought traditionally from Africa under different cultural and religious experiences, I think that as we're learning and as we're integrating things, all of us are doing things based upon our region. You know, we spend a lot of time up here doing a lot with West African drummers and dancers, and depending upon what other kind of influence, whether it's Caribbean, whether it's, you know, Francophone African, you begin to integrate, you know, what you're learning into what you're doing. So it kind of becomes like, you know, syncretized, you know. And I think that we're kind of like, you know, if you look now, music is one of the things that is actually spreading all of our history and cultures, the way we talk, the slang, the lingua, and then, you know, asking and getting into more questions. You know, all music right now looks as though it's moving towards an Afro beat, even gospel music. You know, people in America didn't even want to be called African, you know, maybe preferred Negro or something like that. Now, you know, things are starting to come out, you know, people wearing the dashikis again, people are going more forward again towards natural hairstyles. So there's an evolution of confidence that's coming about also based upon our knowledge and our history. So I think that we're putting pieces back together. I don't know if there's a whole story, but we're adding up a better portion of ourselves beyond what was prescribed to us. Going back to that narrative again, finding out that other people's version of us to make us feel not happy and not confident about ourselves. We're finding happy options, learning about ourselves from other perspectives, where we come from a place where we're content spiritually, physically, with how we were created, you know, by our Creator. And not saying that I'm happy that I'm in the image of God and you got white Jesus and white angels and you left out of the picture. I just cut it clear, you know.
I want to get there for a minute because you brought up something that we struggle in America with, being a post-traumatized community from so many different angles. And we're talking about how healing it is to come full circle when it comes to the traditions and the things that we were almost forced to forget because they didn't want us to know it for many reasons. They didn't want us to be empowered by it. They didn't want us to grow from it. So they tried to suppress it and to, as you said earlier, Julian, to make us ashamed of it. And now that we're in this space, in this sacred space where it's becoming or evolving into a very healing place to be, very reassuring place to be, that I can finally be at peace with who I am, who my ancestors were, and if I'm in a hodgepodge of different cultures and backgrounds, I'm at peace with it because now I'm really getting to who I am. How do we bottle that joy up? There's this thing that's going around talking about Black joy and how magical Black joy is, because now we're kind of dismantling the negative connotation and the negative imagery of Blackness in America and saying, hey, you might have taken it, you might have bottled it up, you might have tried to tell our story a different way, but now we're becoming aware and we're being empowered and we're healing from it. How do you think? How does that feel from these different perspectives? From your different perspectives?
Oh man, it feels great. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Justin. You got this.
It feels great. The way that I express myself is through clothing. The opportunities that I've had to go to Africa, I always re-up on my African garb. And so when I come back to the US, it gives me the opportunity to express myself as an African in the diaspora. And so like even in my profile picture that you see, that's when my wife and we were in the Gambia. And that garment that I have on is called an abaya. So it's a Muslim wear that's full length. It goes all the way to the floor. And so when I'm in New Bern, North Carolina, and I'm walking around with my abaya on a Tuesday afternoon, I get the most crazy looks from everybody because they like, man, who is this Negro? I love the opportunity to be able to express myself and to have that pride to say, all right, this is who I, as a Pan-African, as an African American, as a Black man, I have the opportunity to take pride in who I am, and I'm going to show it to you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I would definitely like to touch into it. One of the things I guess that happens is being educated by the West. We're always operating off of what we were told or what we think. And once we begin to get African definition, we're coming from the I perspective. So the more looks that you get about being dressed in African clothes and they laugh, you really get ready to laugh at them, but you almost feel sorry because they have not accepted or broken out of the box that someone else's math formula have kept them in. One of the confidence things about having African and Black preference, listen, even going to the Caribbean or going anywhere where other Black people are, to see Black people move different and not be totally dominated by Western culture, it gives Black people from the West a sense of happiness to know that somebody is slapping the hell out of a bully, because this whole Western culture is a bully. And when you know your history more, you realize that we've been bullied this whole time. All the things that they say are bad, molesting people, kidnapping people, brutalizing people, stealing people's money, stealing people's land, tricking people out of their inheritance, never getting out of debt for sharecropping. You're in the South. My family's from the South. I live in Buffalo. My family's from Alabama. So my family comes from sharecroppers too. So going back and forth, knowing those histories. And when you know the Black side of the story, you realize that this bully has been bullying us every generation we've been here. So African culture gives you a chance to slap the bully in his teeth.
For sure.
And tell him that his God, you don't need him anymore. His expectations, you don't need him anymore. And basically, we really don't, there's nothing really that you have to offer us that can rearrange how we define ourselves. So we're just pretty much waiting for this system to fall so we can get back to our traditional ways. And I think it's going to be very difficult for people who have faith in Western culture and Western gods to make it into the future, because maybe the time of the Gentiles might be over. And you know, I think that we have been tricked into believing that what CNN and Fox News says is real. And there's more to the world once you leave the US borders. And I think that is what Black people, have to do. We have to get outside the borders of the West, whether it be books, whether it be language or music. We have to get out.
Can I
Or passport
again? All I can say is just be unapologetically Black, whether you're wearing your dashiki, whether you just have the style of a Black person. Like Jay-Z says, I walk like a ball player. That's how my swagger is. Just let everyone who hates us hate us for real. Give them a reason to hate. Okay, he has more swag. She has more swag. I saw a meme on Facebook that says the only reason they call it ghetto because they haven't found a way to take it from us and make money off of it. So just be us. This is not our language, so I will speak broken English all the time, whether I'm professional or unprofessional. And Russell Simmons did it best. He said, hey, I'm going to be in my sneakers when I'm at these $1 million, $1 billion meetings with people. Just be you. Don't be scared to show you're a guy from Buffalo, a guy from New Orleans, a guy from Greenville, a guy from New Bern. I'm going to be me. So that's the best way you can do it. I had a guy tell me one time, shave your beard. It's more professional. He was a brother, and he works in the white corporate world. And I'm like, first of all, that's offensive because my daddy had a beard. I love my daddy beard. I keep my beard because my daddy kept his beard. Second, I work for myself. I ain't got to worry about corporate America. I'm gonna do me. So it's like I'm gonna make corporate America, and that's one thing the rapper and LeBron James has shown corporate America. You all come to us. And now the Instagram, Facebook personalities are doing it. Y'all want to, like, Country Wayne is the best example. If he ain't the countryest Bama out there, if I didn't know him from Facebook, I'd be like, get this guy away from me. But he made them come to him. And Steve Harvey, he said the other day, they sent a lady to teach him how to speak. And she kept telling him to repeat things over. And she kept saying, that's grammatically wrong, grammatically wrong. He said, does this sound better? I am broke, or I is a millionaire. I is a millionaire. So all I'm saying is, do not be ashamed to be us. We act because we were raised in church. Act accordingly when it's time to act accordingly. But stop being us. That's it.
Awesome, awesome. You know, you got to protect, you gotta preserve legacy, I call it. It's our legacy. I don't care where it came from, you can't get away from it. There was a time, you wanted to be ashamed of being the grandson of sharecroppers. But when I started to listen to those stories, and listen to I'm able to pay homage to where I came from. As I said a couple of weeks ago, walking on the sacred grounds of my ancestors, it did something for me. When I went to Selma, Alabama, Mr. Jamo, a couple of years ago, and walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, just to kind of reenact the Bloody Sunday movement, it did something for me. And one of my professors said it best, just as you said it a minute ago in college. He said, hey, you've been so westernized, you got to get out of the box and see the world, because it's not the way they told you. And now that we're able to kind of travel, everybody should have a passport, get your passport, be working on your passport, and be planning those sacred locations and trips, so you can know what's out there past what we've seen, because they whitewashed our story, they told it their way, and now we're able to reclaim it and tell it correctly and celebrate it and be proud of it and wear it and own it, and own it. Not just borrow it, but own it. So let's talk about how you're celebrating Juneteenth in your prospective community. We're going to use this space, and we'll come back and kind of jazz it out in a few more minutes so we don't hold folks. If you have questions or comments to our folks who are here listening with us, and you want to ask some of the panelists a question or throw something out there, please drop it in the chat. We'll make sure we ask it. We're hoping that this dialogue is informative. We're hoping that you guys are having as much fun as I'm having engaging with these brothers. And we're talking about Juneteenth and its traditions and the culture of former enslaved people and ancestors of the enslaved people here in America. So let's talk about what's happening in our communities around Juneteenth. Y'all want to jump out here and say that. And why you do it.
In New Bern, they're gonna have a rooftop party and other things. As you know, I'm a funeral director, so I will be working next Saturday. But when I do get off, I'm gonna take my kids around to a few things. I'm gonna eat some fried fish. I'm gonna get me a little bit of that fried chicken. Some watermelon. They want to claim watermelon and chicken are Black people food. I'm gonna eat it up. Since we're in the South, I might have a little bit of that good old moonshine. You never know.
For sure.
But I'm just going to enjoy. I'm just going to enjoy and celebrate my ancestors and thank God that we're standing on their backs and that they're still here with us.
Hey, I second everything Julian said.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Mr. Jamo, you want to talk about what's happening in your area?
Well, we've started doing activities from the last week of May, doing activities with different organizations. Actually, even taking time to share our history, our culture, and our story with others. Being able to allow people to hear the raw version of what our people have been through, what our people have been going through. here in the city of Buffalo, this massacre has really made other people who are not direct evil-hearted really want to find out what have they been missing the last few hundred years. And it is providing us an opportunity to be open and honest. Sometimes it's a little painful for them to hear it, but I think that it's going to enhance the rest of the planet. And I think that other people need to really know what happened to us, because one of the things that we realize is that as we're learning more of our story, others really don't know our story either. Yes. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that our community, our people are just reminded about our struggle, reminded of our histories, reminded of what we're doing. So we try to provide that. And we also try to provide opportunities to look forward. What do we need to be financially fit? Because there's no need to have a passport and you can't travel out of the country. So we need to understand finance. We also need to understand family history. We need to understand health. So we're doing activities working around all of those realities. That is what we're doing. Everything that involves Black history and culture, we're trying to Blackify it, make it more Blackish. That's what we're doing every day.
Let's do that. Let's make it more Blackish every day. Our Black presence in America matters. And you know, we talk about this in February when we talk about Black History Month. We are grateful to Carter G. Woodson fighting for us to have that month. But we're also wanting folks to know that this is 365 history. If you're in your chat, you know, you can get to the Juneteenth New Bern website where you can find out all the events that are happening in New Bern. Mr. Job, I'm gonna ask you if you have any information to drop it in the chat, and they can post and go and find what's happening in Buffalo. And definitely we will drop off in the chat to follow our social media sites for any updates and things that are happening around the ENC, whether it's Greenville, New Bern, Aden, wherever. We are here to talk about how we're celebrating our struggle, celebrating our culture, and dismantling the lies. Let's be honest, the lies that have been told about it. So definitely we are so excited about this space. We also want to go back, Mr. Jesse, and talk about, I want to talk about, you're telling us a lot about Africa and your experiences while going there. What is significant, and what is making that pilgrimage back to our home state, to the native land, powerful for you? Well, what is that reason behind it?
For me, when I look at the skin that lays on my body, and I look at the hue, I look at the color of it, it means something. When you see a Chinese man in America, before he opens his mouth and you hear his accent, his skin gives you a picture into who he is and where his ancestors come from. So it's the same for me. Even when you look at me as a Black man, it gives you a picture into who I am and where my ancestors come from. So about 4 years ago, my wife and I, we started, the Trayvon Martin case, I think, was the turning point for me. I was a career fireman with the city of New Bern. Out of 66 firefighters, there were only 5 Black firefighters. I was to this day, the youngest Black firefighter to ever work for the city of New Bern. The Trayvon Martin case was happening on a day that I was on shift. When the verdict came out, I was in my dorm room and I cried like a baby. I called my daddy up on the phone crying. I'm a grown man, crying like a baby, because I didn't understand it. And, you know, and growing up in the time that I've grown up, you know, being born in '88 and growing up throughout the '90s and the 2000s, I can't really say that I saw strong, blatant forms of racism or injustice, not like my parents and grandparents would have saw. So for me, that was the first time in my life that I saw a blatant form of injustice right before my eyes. And then, so when the next morning, when we were getting ready to get off shift, I'm the only Black man at the fire station that I'm at. I get out, I leave my dorm room, I go downstairs, getting ready to prepare for shift change. and everybody is silent. Nobody's joking around. Nobody's laughing. Everybody's kind of looking at me out the side of their eye to say, all right, how does Jesse feel? Because I'm pretty sure they tuned into it as well. At another fire station, one of the other fire stations that's in New Bern, I was at that station one night flipping through the channels. VH1 and MTV were side by side, and then I flipped again, and it went to another channel, but it missed one channel, and that channel that it missed was BET. So BET was removed from the TV. So VH1, MTV, and BET were right back to back consecutively. But one of the other firefighters went and purposely removed BET so you wouldn't see it when you were flipping through the channels. So the next morning when we were getting ready to get off shift, I called the lieutenants, my lieutenant and the lieutenant for the oncoming shift. I said, look at this, I want you guys to see this. Someone purposely removed BET when there's just as much booty shaking on MTV as there is on BET. So then it became like an impression on me to say, okay, what else is there? So in 2019, for the year of return from 1619 to 2019, we found out that Ghana was having a celebration in the country, welcoming the diaspora all over the world to come back to Africa. So my wife and I, in 2019, we went to Ghana. And then 2021, we went to the Gambia. And then just 2 months ago, I went to Sierra Leone for a month. And for those who don't know, while I was in Sierra Leone, that was the country that I decided where we would make home. So I received my permanent residency while I was in Sierra Leone, opened up my bank account in Sierra Leone, created a business visa in Sierra Leone. And my wife and I will be moving back to Sierra Leone, hopefully the beginning of next year, and also my children as well. But what made me want to make that move is the way that you feel when you touch down on African soil. When we got to Ghana, as soon as you got off the plane, it was the feeling of everything around you was Black. You are no longer the minority, but you are the majority. When you driving through the city and the president comes through with his motorcade, they make everybody pull over on the side of the road. There's a Black man with immense amount of power, so much power that all traffic in the city has to stop to let his motorcade go through. When you ride through the city, you see the billboards on the side of the road, all the billboards have Black people on them. This Black woman, she's smiling, holding toothpaste. When you watch television, all the commercials have Black people on the commercials. The whole time we were in Ghana, we were in Ghana for 2 weeks. I counted 22 white people the whole time we were in Ghana. And probably 3/4 of those 22 were when we were on the beach. I was in Sierra Leone for a month. I counted 20. In 1 month of being in Sierra Leone, I counted 20 white people. And so it's just a different feeling. When we were talking about getting your passports, man, that's something that I feel like every Black person needs to do. They need to get their passport and they need to go to Africa and feel what that feeling feels like, because it'll change your life. You'll come back to the US completely changed to know that everything that we've learned as Westernized people is wrong. Oh, I won't say everything, but a lot of things that we've learned as Westernized people is wrong. Down to the way that we take care of ourselves, down to the way that we take care of each other, down to where our societal structures are. The demonization of Africa I feel like it's all by design, but once you get there, you realize that it's a beautiful place where people still care for each other. I hope I'm not rambling on, but that was the motivation for me. And they want us there. Don't believe the hype of people saying that continental Africans don't want to be around African Americans. That is not true. I had a Gambian brother tell me that he's waiting for African Americans to come back because we need to come back. He said, we want you to come back. We want you to marry back into the culture. We want you to bring your US dollars to help benefit the Gambian people. And they want us there in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone, if I could share a short story, but about how much I learned in Sierra Leone. The only reason why the capital, Freetown, in Sierra Leone exists is because of us African Americans. When the Revolutionary War was going on, the British was given an option to enslave Africans, to say, if you come and fight on the side of the British, we'll give you land and we'll give you freedom. All right, so for those enslaved Africans who decided to fight on the side of the British, once the Revolutionary War was over, they took those, about 3,000, they took those Africans to Nova Scotia, which is now Canada. A man by the name of Thomas Peters, he was the leader of this group. They lived in Canada for maybe about 4 years, and then he petitioned to go to England to say the living conditions that you guys have put us in aren't conducive to what you told us we would receive. You told us we would receive freedom and we would receive land. Nova Scotia is cold. So after he went to England, England said, hey, we have a West African colony that we're building. We'll grant you guys freedom. We don't know where in Africa you came from, but we'll take you back and try to get you as close as we can. So we'll take you to this West African colony. So they gathered up 1,100 of those 3,000 African Americans, took them back to West Africa, which ended up becoming Freetown, Sierra Leone. That's the reason why it's called Freetown, because African Americans founded it. And even till this day, Thomas Peters, his great grandchildren are in Freetown. The surname still exists, and there are plenty of Sierra Leoneans that have American surnames. So that's history that's hidden from us. We don't even know anything about it. It's like it's like the pilgrimage to go back to Africa isn't anything new, because this was 1791. And so we are lost sometimes as African Americans, I feel like we are lost in a dimension of our own, because we don't know anything, and everything has been hidden from us, and we have to go and search it out. And once we search it out, we're blown away by everything that has been withheld from us. And so to know that Sierra Leone has direct African American ties to us, and that people of Africa, they want us to come back home. They want us to invest. They want us to marry back into the culture. They want us to bring our skills and our talents that in those places where Africa is being abused, we could help repair. And so that's it for me.
I like the fact that we listened over the course of the evening talk about, I hear the word restoration of our people who have been held down for so long. So I hear that restoration, recollecting, reclaiming our heritage, reclaiming our stories, reclaiming our in essence, our time, and taking that opportunity to be at one with our culture and our history, and not necessarily put it on the shelf anymore and walk by it like it's it's just there, it was past, it's history, it's no longer relevant. And so we looked at it like American history, Black history, the story of the descendants of Africans are no longer relevant. But now we are able to kind of say, hey, it is. Because so much of who we are, so much of what we branded as Black culture is rooted and grounded in those of us who were descendants and our ancestors in the Ivory Coast of Africa. So that is really amazing to hear, your pilgrimage back to the motherland. Any other comments about that, Jomo or Julian, that you want to talk about, or even pay honors to Jesse for taking that courage and that mantle to go back to the motherland to live?
It's amazing. Just made me think. Look at some of our city cousins. They won't even come back down south for a family reunion. You might be lucky if they come back for a funeral. Like what's going on in Hilton Head, South Carolina. People left 80, 90 years ago. Now they're selling off the land. But I mean, Africa's beautiful. And I feel like Jesse feels we've always heard wrong things about it, like ugly things, but while they were keeping us out, they were busy going in. And Jesse, you know, I tell him all the time how proud I am, how he influences me to want to make that trip. And you know, around here, Jesse's the man. He's making a big step, and he has no fear. So you know, hey, hopefully he would be the catalyst for other New Bernians and native New Orleans to move back home to Africa, or at least to be dual citizens and conduct business over there.
Hey, I'm glad to know we got a friend that's going to Sierra Leone that I can visit and hang out with and can show me around. That's good to know, Jesse. So as soon as you get settled, man, I'm coming.
For sure, for sure.
Sure. John Mo, do you have anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, what I really would like to say is, one, as the mantra is, we should all be trying to, as our children have PlayStations and all those things, make sure that we get ourselves and our children some passports. We want to make sure that they have the option, not just to be in the meta world, but be in the real world. Make sure that they have opportunities, to see this earth. God didn't give us the Southern United States or one little neighborhood. The whole planet belonged to Black people too. And I think that we should stand in that firmness. And I believe that we need to make sure that we teach our children about the legacy of global ownership, the aspect of Africans spending time investing in each other and learning each other's history and culture. That is where we can win. No one can defeat us at loving each other. So that is what we must practice. For all you Christians, practice loving your brother more than loving your enemy, and watch this miracle that's about to take place. All right. The other thing that I would like to say is, as we begin to travel to Africa, let's learn of what happened to us and how did it throw us off. And if we learn the traditions, we also can learn what can turn us back on, because we might have money and education, but African people have common sense. They have historical, cultural knowledge. They have love, and they have a reverence for a godly lifestyle. So there's some things that we picked up in the West, and there's a whole lot of stuff that we got to wash. And pretty much like you said, most everything that we learned over here is wrong. Like, so I'll say it. I'm not ashamed. Most everything we learned over here is wrong, totally wrong. Totally it works wrong for Europeans. It works in a European dominated capitalistic system, which throws off the ability for us to have a future for natural people of the earth. So we're constantly fighting. We're constantly in this schizophrenic kind of reality. But the more we begin to control ourselves, the more we get to control our own business, the more we control our own families, our own communities, we define ourselves. As a millionaire, I don't have to speak proper English. You know, that reality kicks in. And it's a process of continually growing. The more we grow, I think the better it is. So it's not like it's a limit. But this idea about finding out what Black people in America have done once they went back to Africa. The first 10 presidents of Liberia are from America. All right. So he's talking about Sierra Leone. So we need to really relook at history again from our perspective, Blackify everything that we're looking at and kind of rearrange the story. We're going to have to get our perspective of what happened in the story. And that's what I'm just going to stay there. That's where the more we know about ourselves, the more self-assured we are, and we have a collective consciousness. We begin to be on code, our unity of thought, our self-determination to be happy to see other Black people doing good, learning how to practice working our economics together. In the Caribbean, they call it susu. African communities have ways where people who don't have a lot of resources put their little bit together and make something big come out of it. Learning how to make sure that we learn how to collectively work in the field, in the crop, in the harvest, learning to make sure we have a communal purpose, learning to make sure that we still respect each other's creativity, learning to make sure that we respect each other's faith. Those are Kwanzaa principles. That's not religion, that's Kwanzaa principles. So imagine what happened when we practice loving on each other and just kind of forget about other people's version of the story. That's really what we need to do. We need to get a magic eraser and just erase all of those images and all that stuff off and put your grandmother in the middle of your Bible. And when you think about God, think about your family and how you can serve God through loving your people.
Powerful.
You sure you're not a preacher? You sure you're not a preacher?
The
We
truth is
talk
just the
about
truth.
the, the truth is the truth, and I love the fact of putting your family in that space. Raising them up. My cousin, who's from Ghana, and we were having a conversation one day. He was really frustrated that he had a family reunion, and he was like, "Let me pull you guys to the side. You're putting your elders to the side. They need to be in the center of this conversation. They are there. We need to be drawing from their strength. If you go to my country, he says, you'll see the elders in the center, not outside sitting on the sidelines. They're in the center of the story." And he was so frustrated because they're like, "Come on, y'all sit here. We're gonna go over here." No, we need to be together. We need to be together in this space. Such a sacred space. And we talk about, and we're gonna open the floor for questions if there be any, but we talk about oral traditions, recollections, legends, tales, songs, religious beliefs, customs, sayings that make us who we are, that kind of shape and mold Black culture to be what it is, to be who it is, and to stand alone. And we're in this space. I'm telling you, tonight has empowered me and has been exciting for me to sit here and to hear these different perspectives of Black culture and how we fought, how we're still fighting, how we're still raising the banner of pride to say this is who we are, and we're not going anywhere. We're owning it. We're owning it not just in these states, but we're owning it globally. And take your children and your children's children to hear that story. Make them hear it. And then share it with your neighbors, people who don't look like you, so they understand that truth frees us, really. Truth frees us. It's freeing, it's healing, and I love it. I love that what this week, what this signifies. I do want to say, as we get ready to kind of come to an end this evening, Juneteenth is falling on Father's Day. And one of my good sisters, Miss Alicia Andrews, is hosting the Juneteenth event in the town of Ada, North Carolina, here in Pitt County. And I told you earlier, she's focusing on Black men. We must protect each other. I think we said it so much tonight. We must protect each other as men, as brothers. We cannot be ashamed and allow this culture to dismantle the relationships that we should have as men to make sure that we are good, that we are healthy, and that we are thriving. Can we talk about that for a minute? Then we're going to have some questions and we're going to follow it.
We gotta lose weight. Look, we gotta lose weight. Take the salt off our plate. Eat more vegetables. I know a lot of us love meat, so let's try to do at least 60-40, 60% vegetables, 40% meat, and try to drink half a gallon of water a day. For people, it's going to be hard for. Start off in the morning doing 10 to 20 push-ups and sit-ups a day. Just start off, and consistency is key.
Well, I'm going to just communicate this. One thing about Africa is it makes us look at the power of man and the compatibility of man and woman building family and nation together a whole lot different. And one of the most important things is it makes you, as a man, especially coming from America, based upon what we have seen, how we've lived, what we see in a lot of communities, it makes man want to be alive. And an alive man want to take care of his physical body because you need your body to live on this earth. You don't want to be a memory. You want to be around for your children. So it makes you get a different kind of wisdom, what you eat, what you think, how you bless your food, how you bless your children, watching them while they sleep, telling them the truth. Little basic things that America teach you to do the opposite. So I think that this whole aspect of the honor that goes to man, the honor that goes to woman, because there's a balance that show how much we need each other, and anything that I think maybe that make Black men and Black women fight is the devil. So I don't like the devil. So let's follow and stay away from the devil. Follow God and stay away from the devil. That's what I'm saying. Anything make us fight and not build family, that's not good. And we have to just get that basic. We need to build each other. We need a culture that builds each other. Everything America told us is wrong.
For sure.
Brother Julian, you got anything you want to say? I can. So we gotta have any questions from our listeners.
My fault. I was on mute. Just exercise. Mentally strong, physically strong, spiritually strong. Put more fruits and vegetables in your diet. Exercise. You know, as Brother Jomo would say, take care of your temple. Meditate. Just do things to enhance yourself. And if you are enhancing yourself, it will spill off into your friends and your family. Encourage one another.
Awesome. Any questions or any comments from anybody that's listening out there before we come back with final thoughts? Comments from our panelists. This is Rich. I mean, this is good. Like when I always take it that when you don't have any questions, y'all deliver so good, nobody has anything to ask to say. that shows that you guys have done a phenomenal job with disseminating the information you put out there tonight. Are there any final thoughts, things that you guys would like to say as we wrap up this conversation tonight?
Yeah, Black people say America. I just
Repeat that.
I want to say this. Black people, the first people shed their blood for this government, this land done to the natives, you know. So we are the ones I think that are in position to balance it out. And you know, everything I'm saying, I'm not hating on any Europeans. I'm just saying that we have to define things for ourselves. We have to define what's good and respectful for our ancestors. We have to define what's good for us in the present, and we damn sure better take care of the generations to come. That's our responsibility. So all these ancestors that we're talking about, we're going to where they're at. So how can you go to your ancestors? You're not looking out for the generation coming behind you. So be mindful of that. Don't let no devil trick you out of being honorable to your ancestor, respectable to the children that got to come on this earth. Let's bless it and set it right.
Mr. Jomo, before you stop, somebody dropped in the chat to please explain Sankofa and to talk about what we feed our mind, body, and spirit.
Sankofa is a Ghanaian 3 words, Sankofa. It means go, back, fetch, return. It means it's not wrong for us to go back to the past, find out what's needed, and move forward. So with that being said, we have to know history. We have to know what happened to us. We've been operating out of trauma and duress for over 400 and about 3 years, according to my watch. We're off. And we need a bigger help than what we've been getting. And I think that the creator of heaven and earth wants us to return back to how the embodiment created us in the image of God. So we need to get back into that natural liberty. With that being said, let us move slow, be healthy, mentally, physically, and spiritually, and let's invest time in building ourselves. And we love each other, and we can't go wrong. Just be selfish with our energy. Love each other. Be selfish for a little while. Love each other. Watch what happens.
That's what I'm talking about. Love each other, embrace each other. Mr. Julian, you want to bring us any final comments for the evening?
Hey, let's just live in our full skin. Let's not be ashamed of who we are. Let's not be ashamed of where we came from. And definitely, let's not be ashamed of where we're going. Think of us first. Don't put these other agendas over our agenda. Let's work on getting our reparations. And let's work on building stronger Black communities or stronger Black people in this world, not just America. We just can't worry about America. We have to worry about Black people all over the world because we all we got.
Mr. Jesse, I'm gonna call on you before we close out tonight, brother, to give us some parting words.
I agree with everything that Julian said. You know, it's about being a little selfish. You know, taking care of us. That's being unapologetically Black. You know, making everything a little blacker. All these terms that have been used tonight. You know, these are the models that we should live by. That it's the models that everyone else has lived by. and it's a model that we have been told to forget about. So I think that those are the models that we need to live by. That Black is beautiful. You know, Black girls rock. That, you know, all of these things that speaks to empower us. These are the things that we need.
Awesome. Listen, I want to say this. Go back. If you're not traveling abroad and you say this is not in my budget right now, we talk about building financial wealth and being in that spot that you can. Go to your family reunion and ask some questions about your legacy. Start there. You know, go home, visit some folks. You know, gather under the oak tree and tell some stories and develop some oral traditions in your stories and make sure that it's intergenerational. Don't let it just be you and grandma and you and the uncle. Let it be the whole family coming together and share those sacred spaces in that time so we can start to build each other. As we close tonight, in the words of our dear sister, Asada Shakar, she said, it is our duty to win. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our change. Guys, this has been great. I hope we can do this again. I've had fun. I hope we've had fun together, talking about Juneteenth, talking about the struggle to liberation in America and abroad, and talking about reclaiming our time and protecting our legacy. This has been amazing. I hope you all have enjoyed. I hope you all have a great Juneteenth weekend. Make sure you check the chat and the links. Click on those links, save the chat, and make sure you're going back and visiting. There's been a lot of events shared throughout the community. Sign up if you need to get emails and links. Sign up tonight so you can get emails from these folks and know what's happening in the community, because we're celebrating Black excellence, not just in June, not just in February, but we're making everything Blackity Black all year long, all over the world. It is my duty to make sure that we keep having these conversations. So yeah, go to your family reunion, because I'm going to mine. In fact, I'm gonna have some cousins and say, let's go to the sacred ground and love on each other and honor our ancestors. Michelle, guys, I think she has an announcement that she can't put out. I'm gonna let her open her mouth and say this real quick, and then we're gonna call it a night.
No, good evening, everyone. I really enjoyed the event tonight. And Reggie, I wanted you to put the two flyers in the chat for Greene County Juneteenth events.
Okay.
Rosenwald School Center is having a 3-day event, and there's one church, Leviton Chapel, Original Free Will Baptist Church. They're having an event just on June 18th. Hope someone can come out and support the two events in Greene County. Take care.
Can you
Thank you.
share those events on the Facebook page?
I will share them on the Facebook page to make sure they're shared on the Juneteenth
Yeah.
Facebook page on the and that if you're in the ENC this week, there's stuff happening in New Bern all week. They started yesterday. Of course, in Greenwood this weekend, Greene County this weekend. I saw Pamlico County. I see Onslow County. If you are around and you have something that you need to do, make sure that you get out, make it a family event, honor your father, celebrate with them, and love on each other. You guys have a good night. It's been real, and we call it a night. Thank you. Love you guys. Love, justice, and equality. Love.
Love. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.